Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Vanguard Uplink podcast. I am your host, CCP Gortz. Joining me today, CCP Jayess, the creative lead of EVE Vanguard. Welcome, CCP Jayess.
Thanks for having me.
It has been 6 long months since I last had you in the studio.
Really? 6? Wow. Okay.
Time flies.
Time does fly.
Time flies. Well, today we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about how well defined the Vanguard is. We're going to talk about that process of tying EVE and Vanguard together. Then we're going to talk about that brutal extraction process, which is something a little special that EVE Vanguard does. Shall we proceed?
Let's get into it.
All right. So 6 months. How have things been on the lore front? How are things maturing with EVE Vanguard?
So we've done a ton of work over the past few months on sort of building the foundations of the story. And sort of locking that down, and bringing everyone along for the ride, hopefully on the team. The sort of journey of the Vanguard from sort of being sort of under the sort of control of the Deathless to sort of working their way free of that somehow. That we're gonna sort of reveal all of that, and then sort of on to where the Vanguard are these sort of fully realized free people, and going about their business, raiding the crash sites of New Eden.
And you're breadcrumbing this out for now, like it's appearing in like little bite-sized chunks.
Yeah, so we're gonna sort of like we're writing a story about exactly what happened and how it happened in the story. I'm thinking of it as kind of like the sort of Rogue One story of the Vanguard, of how this group of people formed, and sort of how the sort of like what will be the lore of the game, how that all kind of came together and happened. How it was built, where it was built, who built it, how the Resonant Garden was built, which is where all the Vanguard consciousnesses are stored, how that was built, by whom, why, all of these kinds of questions. We're going to try and drip feed these out in lore posts. I've got the whole thing kind of shaped now. I just need to break it down and then send it to you to
do my work
onto the website. Yeah.
Hey, happy to do so. Yeah. So speaking of websites, I have seen your good self slide into our Discord now and again and start talking with the general public. How is that interacting with fans? Are you enjoying that?
It's really fun. I mean, it's been this most recent run was pretty brutal because there was a lot of feedback and it's a very early sort of work in progress version of the game. So, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, lots of stuff to improve. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I like just talking about the game, and I'm not precious about anything, so I'm not offended about people who don't like particular things, or so yeah. I mean, I was on Sunday again. Actually, I was on the Discord for a while, and dropped into a little hangout with a few people and answering questions, and just listening. And there's one guy who shan't be named who has Dust working on his machine, and so she was streaming Dust for me and explaining to me all of the mechanics and things like that. And it's just great fun, and it's really helped inform the design of the game. And so, for example, one of the big things that came up was that there's sort of we weren't really telegraphing to players how, like, what the structure of the session is, what the narrative of this like extraction session is. Like other games like Arc Raiders, there's the big nuke that comes at the end, and you've got these lifts that go up and down. But so we've written now like a narrative that sort of defines what the extraction game mode is, and how we communicate that to players, and really clearly telegraphing when it's going to end and how it's going to end and why it's going to end. And so there's a bunch of, because also we had a problem where people didn't know when the session was going to end, so you would just suddenly just die. So that wasn't great. So we've fixed it. Even the brutal playtests are brutal, but they're really useful. But yeah, so I love it talking to them.
It seems like whenever I go to make my dinner, of which I do like dinners, whenever I go to make my dinner, it's you or CCP Collins suddenly you're on. So I'll come back post feed and just, you guys have written like 100 lines. And I'm like, what? No one told me you guys are jumping on.
Okay.
But it's all good stuff. It's all good
Yeah.
stuff. It's great to see.
Yeah, I think I just jump on whenever I've got free time now. So, but yeah, I think it's really helpful, because obviously not everybody's on Discord at the same time, and so the problem is if like one of us has gone on and told a bunch of people some information, then a few hours later there's a different group of people on, they don't have that information, and so it's really easy for sort of these like narratives to build, and and so I think if we're like regularly talking to this group, we can sort of help stabilize the narrative and make sure people have good expectations or the right expectations for what we're actually building, and then that should, that I think they really appreciate it. For one, they really like being in the know, and they like sort of like talking about the game, but it also really helps then when the playtests come around that they sort of know what to expect, and there's not any sort of like surprises, or there's I think it's like I think the more we can talk to them,
talking to those fans.
Yeah.
So how well defined are the actual Vanguard now in your head? Like, we've not put down the hard fast, as you say, you're sort of breadcrumbing it out. So in your head, do you know the backstory of the Vanguard now and how it's going to go forward as the game gets closer to release?
Yeah, we've got the backstory pretty well locked in now, and now it's just a case of building not just the sort of like lore that we'll post, but also starting to actually now build content based on that narrative. So Vanguard suit, the different components of the Vanguard suit, and then eventually deployables, equipment. It's sort of like a cascading effect. Like once we have this like central thing of like our hero character and the culture of our hero character really well defined, which I think now we do, other decisions then become really easy. Whereas in the past, because we didn't have these very high level things locked down with the correct level of certainty and to the correct level of detail, it was difficult to make downstreamed decisions about even really simple things. And it's one of the reasons why some elements of the game at times felt like somewhat disjointed or even random, is because we didn't have this like core understanding of what the game was and what our character is and who they are and why they're fighting and who they're fighting against, like all these like really fundamental questions. We didn't have all the answers to everything at the necessary level of detail.
Well, speaking of fighting against, in the most recent play tests, like we've really concentrated on the Upwell buildings and the Mordu's Legion. So how do you tell that story with just the surroundings and the planet itself?
Yes, so it's called in the industry, it's called environmental storytelling. So there's a bunch of ways that you can do it. So the story, if you would like to know, is that these there's crash sites across New Eden happening all the time. Like there's wars happening above the surfaces of moons and planets, and ships come down and crash into the surface. And then Upwell are one of the groups of people that get contracts to recover this stuff. So they kind of like initially they send down groups who like lay these concrete foundations, and then they lay these big industrial kind of metal framed buildings like prefabbed on top of the concrete foundations, and then they kind of conduct these massive scale sort of salvage operations where they recover everything valuable from the crash site. And so so then it just becomes a question of like, well, if you were going to do that, what would that look like and what would it feel like, and how much do they care about the safety of their workers? Do they care about it at all? The answer is no, they don't give a shit. They don't care about any of those people. So it's like there's no comfort. Everything is everything has to be very robust, and so we're talking about big kind of no sort of like wafer thin touchscreens and super sort of sleek sci-fi. It's more like physical switches and chunky just indestructible objects that need to be dropped in from space and work and then taken off to the next planet. So but we're talking now about how do we bring a bit more of like a lived in feel, because at the moment we've got the blockout in, but now we need to make them feel a bit more lived in. And so we're using like oil rigs as a reference, for example, and submarines, and so like how do people personalize little spaces maybe, you know, how do we make this place feel like there's real humans working there? Because these workers are just contractors.
Yeah.
And they're terrified of the Vanguard. That's the other thing about them. That like seeing a Vanguard is like the worst possible outcome.
It's a bad day for bad guys.
It's a bad day for. Well, that's the thing. They're not even bad guys. They're just Upwell workers. But they're protected by Morty's Legion, who are contracted to kill you if you show up. So they are bad guys.
How does the process work when you're talking to Big EVE, this game that's been going for 23 years, and Vanguard? Like, are you talking directly to CCP Iceland when you're thinking of narrative and lore? Is there a two-way conversation happening there?
Yeah. So I have a really good relationship with all the narrative folks there and the creative people as well. And then I actually live in the same town as CCP Hilmar. So sometimes I'll bump into him on the train and I'll tell him what I'm thinking, and he's, why would you do it that way? do it this way. You know, he's really helpful. Yeah, so you know, I'm talking to all kinds of people from the EVE team to get sort of direction about, you know, like a high level about how these things should work and what these factions are like and what the relationships are. Also looking at Dust a lot. So CCP Ratati is like the godfather of Dust. So
he will love that title.
I'm sort of talking to him a ton, you know. So yeah, I mean, you know, pretty constant contact, especially when it comes to the sort of the really kind of big pieces, like the details sort of like downstream, you know, that it makes sense then for us on this team to fill that out. But you know, we get these kind of, you know, these defined play areas that it has to come from the main EVE game, so it's consistent. I
just love the idea of you and CCP Helmar talking on the train.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've got everyone on that train is under NDA, so there'll be no leaks whatsoever. All right, let's close it off by talking about one of the features that our VIPs saw recently, which is we've sort of redefined the extraction method in Vanguard. Can you talk about the brutality of what it is to extract as a Vanguard now?
Yeah, so we wanted to do something kind of interesting with the mechanic, and you know, and so we thought, okay, you know, why are they extracting? You know, and obviously clones are very sort of like, you know, they're sort of mass produced, so then, you know, the clone itself isn't super valuable, but the suit and the physical items, we want to take that stuff away. So what the Vanguard have done is they've stolen some industrial Upwell sort of teleportation technology, and they've retrofitted it they've sort of like jerry-rigged it for their own purposes. So right before the Vanguard raid a crash site, they crash a bunch of these extraction beacons, or, you know, these like teleportation beacons down onto the surface. So then obviously everyone knows the Vanguard are coming, so everyone gets, you know, everyone freaks out. The Vanguard arrive, they do Vanguard stuff and kill and shoot and steal and salvage, and then they get to these extraction sites, they activate them, and they send their consciousness and their physical stuff back to the Resonant Garden and back to the war barge, but their biological matter is just ripped apart because it's an industrial transport device, right? So it's not built for teleporting human beings and biological matter, so all of that just gets horribly torn apart, and so it's like this kind of fun moment where you run into this thing and then you get melted.
So even if you win, you lose.
Even if you win, you're getting, you know, because that's the melancholy of being an immortal war clone, right?
You're gonna get glooped.
Life is not great.
Yeah, physical you is expendable, but your gear is safe.
Yeah. What you have on you and your suit and your weapons, like those are the important stuff, and that all gets transported back. But your body is like kind of the opposite of, I guess, real life.
Brutal. Brutal. All right. Well, that takes us up to the end of today. Thank you very much for joining me. If you want to hear more about upcoming lore, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. I'll see you in the office. I'll see you next time. There I am, pointing at the camera. Thank you very much. All right. We'll see you next time, everyone. Ta-ra. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Doodle-doo. Thank you, Jeff Bezos. So our Amazon plate is missing. Don't know where it's gone.
Vietnam's in slightly plate?
Well,
Someone stole that.
let's just say misplaced. Well, we last spoke about 6 months ago.
It's the effect I have on people.
It is
Turning
just drives me right up.
into a goblin.
Yeah.
Like, is it my hat?
No, your hat's fine. That's fine.
It's fine.
All right, here we go.